Welcome everyone, and today we are discussing how the property industry in the SMME sector has been impacted by COVID, by lockdown, by remote work. And the people who are going to help me discuss this today, Shawn, Theunissen, the CEO of Property Point, and Desigan, Chetty, the COO of Property Point. Now, I usually give us a little bit of an idea of what the companies that we're dealing with is all about. And let me tell you something. Property Point has a lot to brag about. So I'm going to throw a couple of statistics at you before we get started with them. They have 167 beneficiary companies that have been selected to participate in the Property Point incubation program. 80%, 87% in fact, of the beneficiaries have completed successfully the incubation program. And together they have managed to get to a 1.2 billion marketplace cap in terms of the beneficiary company programs that they've had. And of course, they can correct me at any time here, but it's really just so much that one can brag about. So let me have a look at their statistics regarding full-time jobs created. 2,423 according to the latest records. And I'm sure that number has changed now a little bit. I know you've had a couple of awards that have been allocated, and I want us to talk about that a little bit later in the interview. Property Point has had an incredible run of not only incubating small businesses in the property sector, of a wide variety of businesses actually, but you've also managed to get to your passion, which is making a difference in South Africa, employing people, creating employment, helping businesses to not be a statistic. We know that story of how 80% of businesses fail in the first 3 years. And somehow Property Point has managed to keep businesses in business. And I really want to find out about that for our audience as well. So I'm going to start with you, Shawn. Is there anything that you think you might have done differently in the last year in terms of how lockdown has affected accelerators or incubators?
I think good day, Shawn, and to everyone else that's listening. I think that if we look at the impact over the past year, one has to reflect on the expediency that you had adapted as a business. I think one of the things that I might have done differently is really just geared businesses up, because we're in a kind of traditional industry, the property industry. So the type of businesses that we support are from construction businesses to plumbers, to professional services, architects, quantity surveyors, to services, a cleaning company, a security company. And, the digital divide is still quite great for those type of traditional companies. So definitely how we could have, if we were able to gear them up to respond better. But I do think that if we start reflecting on the way we did respond, there was quite a few things that we feel that we also did right. So our ability to have engaged with our businesses and introducing new digital tools like your Zoom and your Teams was something that we were able to do quite effectively. If I can maybe just give some insights, I may be going into much detail now, but one of the things that we did as an incubator was assess, and we built a matrix of our businesses to say, what of these businesses that we are supporting initially, who of those businesses are essential entities and who are non-essential. Then we also looked at saying, okay, what is the impact that the non-essential businesses have? Where's their level of sustainability? And what's their level of connectivity as well? I think in some instances, we were able to actually have businesses or buy data for businesses that were not connected. We had some of our local economic development businesses out in KZN, for instance, that was not on WhatsApp as a tool. So they were totally disconnected from the world. So being able to build this matrix and really plot businesses in terms of where they were at made a huge difference in how we responded to our support towards them.
So in other words, in these traditional businesses who really didn't see the need for anything like a digital platform suddenly discovered that they can actually become more effective in running their businesses from a digital point of view, from a connectivity point of view.
Correct, definitely. And I think one of the key responses that we were able to really focus on was identifying those type of gaps. And not just necessarily the digital divide gap, but we found, especially during lockdown, that there were extensive information gaps in the marketplace. So as an offering through our platform Entrepreneurship to the Point, we were able to host over 100 webinars during the lockdown period, really just exposing market information to businesses across South Africa. And I'm happy to, one of the examples, for instance, was the relief funds that were coming out. We were able to really bring on board the decision makers of these relief funds, both from private and public sector, like the Oppenheimer Fund or the or CIFA at the time, and get these entities to share the information on our platform. What we did was we did a campaign where we even translated the information into various languages. So we had isiXhosa, isiZulu, Sesotho, Afrikaans, and English that we were able to put out into the market and provide that level of information.
Wow, that's incredible. So I'm actually picking up from what you're saying that, you know, in a crisis, there's always opportunity to innovate. And at this stage, I want to go over to Desigan and just give me some idea of Desigan, in your experience now with all of these entrepreneurs. How has their relationship with employees from a developmental point of view and from a performance management point of view, how has that shifted, if at all?
Yeah, thanks, Deshan, and always great to chat to you. I think from a personal perspective, fundamentally, you know, a lot of the entrepreneurs had to really adapt the way in which they started to manage staff, to manage the lockdown scenario, and certainly to be able to effectively monitor their teams. And I think this became quite tricky, especially those businesses that were still in essential services and were going out and still operating in the midst of the pandemic. They obviously had to ensure that you know, they were complying now to the various requirements that were in place from a health and safety point of view, not only for themselves internally, but also for their customers and clients. And I think it became a period where you know, people were uncertain as to how to proceed. You were kind of ensuring that you were doing the best that you can for your staff as well as for your customers, and still being able to deliver and remain in business, you know, during a very difficult period. I think what we saw, you know, predominantly amongst our entrepreneurs was, it was certainly a significant mindset shift. So when lockdown occurred, you know, one could never fathom how exactly it would impact the individual. And in addition to us focusing on the entrepreneur and providing all of these services to equip the businesses, it was really focusing on the individual and to make sure that the entrepreneur was in the right mindset and in the right frame of mind. Because, you know, I think one could have easily fallen into the trap of saying, we're in a lockdown scenario, you know, what do? We can't do anything. And, you know, I think the narrative out there was that we saw a lot of businesses actually fold or cease to operate. A lot of the businesses in our program, I think, yes, took the opportunity to stop and to reflect, but also to be able to say, how do they take advantage of this new normal in terms of managing their workforce and trying to get the best out of their people? I think we know that, you know, there were very challenging circumstances where, as a result of businesses not being able to meet their operational funding needs, that staff had to be cut. And unfortunately, if you weren't going to get relief funding from TERS, you know, you really had to make some hard decisions how you were going to manage your operational costs.
Yeah.
So a lot of that was also then around, you know, how does one manage staff and help to create a secure environment for staff? Because I think what we saw, and even from a property point perspective personally, you know, we gave staff certainty that they didn't have to worry about their livelihood. And I think for those businesses that were fortunate enough to do that, and here again, you know, making sure that when you get into difficult circumstances in business, and not just a pandemic, that you have those emergency funds in place, or you have that that kitty in place to be able to carry you through difficult times became extremely important. So it was really around engaging the mindset of the entrepreneur to make sure that they were still positive despite some of the challenges, and work with them through how they were going to still operate. From a staff perspective, it was really then to make sure that that kind of positivity also went on to their staff, engaging staff regularly, keeping them up to date with exactly what was happening. You didn't necessarily want to create uncertainty in a time where everything around you was uncertain.
Right.
And you really wanted to make sure that from a livelihood perspective that people were comfortable with what they were doing.
Yeah. So
on the question of performance management, sorry.
No, sorry, carry on.
On the question of performance management, I think to your earlier question, it was around saying, how do you start to manage people in this different environment, knowing that I couldn't necessarily see you and see the work that you're delivering on, but have the confidence and the faith in your teams to be able to capacitate them, and whether that meant giving them access to digital and to technology and to data, was a way of capacitating them in a way in which they now needed to perform their core functions, but obviously do it in a different way. And perhaps also the level of oversight now from the entrepreneurs started to change, because I think you went through a period where, okay, we're not in constant communication, so I need to be checking up on you more regularly initially. But then we kind of went through a process of, okay, I think we're getting comfortable with working and seeing that actually the task is output driven. I don't necessarily need to have you in my line of sight to know that you are doing what you need to do. And I think that is only built up through trust and through having the confidence in your staff, which, a lot of people had prior to the pandemic, but I think it was that antiquated behavior of saying, I need to be able to see you to know that stuff is being done, moving to an environment now where, we can't necessarily be in contact all the time, but I'm comfortable that I've capacitated you and you have everything in your disposal, in your armory, to do what you need to do effectively.
Thanks, Desigan. I'm picking up from a lot from what you're saying has to be first that sense of security, that people kind of get a feeling that you are there to look after them and that their jobs are not necessarily, under threat. So that's the first line of getting performance management right, is to let people know that you're not just going to use any excuse to get rid of them, especially if they're good performers. And then I'm also hearing you say that there has to be a capacity building component to it, where you can give your people positivity and that sense of trust that they're doing the right job because it's output driven, and that we're moving away from, I love the word antiquated micromanagement style observing of people's output versus, once you've capacitated them well enough, they actually just get on with the job because they know what's expected of them. And then the trust part is also so important there. Now, Shawn, I think from a property point of view, you incubate a number of businesses every year, in fact, well over 100 businesses. And tell me, how frequently does that happen, and how many of them do you see as high growth businesses that sort of successfully get through your incubation program?
Yeah, so typically we would work with various clients across the country where they have a need in their supply chain, and we would do intakes. Desigan will remind me now how many current businesses we have operational at the moment. But the aim is really to focus on identifying those growth potential businesses that really fits the need that exists from a supply chain perspective. So Property Point's approach is always to develop business for the market opportunities and to create market access opportunities for businesses. And we really take the view that in order to look at economic stimulation, and you need to identify growth potential businesses. I think, unfortunately, in the incubation or acceleration space, one has to have that lens around who are high growth businesses and who are businesses that will be able to create other opportunities for other businesses in order to really make an impact. And that's very much the approach that we've taken. I think also having reflected on it, Shawn, Property Point's been around for 12 years. We've been here during good economic times, tough economic times, and a global pandemic. And if we start looking at the lens, and we've got a really great impact report that came out about 2 years ago. If you look at the lens of why incubation support is success, or why Property Point as an incubation support is successful, it's the ability to have that engagement with the businesses and capacitate them to be able to run their businesses, run their staff, develop their staff as well. One of the key pillars that we focus on is talent management within the organization in order for them to grow the business. And even during good times and tough economic times, those elements become quite critical in why a business is successful.
Absolutely. So the talent management aspect, it starts from recruiting really, and then it builds up from there. And I love what you're saying about, the reality is that you've got to identify businesses that are high growth because they stand the greatest chance of employment creation, and also the greatest chance of making impact ultimately in the GDP, because the more small businesses we can get to that point, the better the economy of South Africa starts to run. So Desigan did make a point there of saying at 75 businesses right now. And do you incubate once or twice a year? How frequently does it happen?
So we must probably have about 4 to 5 to 6 intakes a year, depending on the market need. So currently we have 75 active businesses. In total, we've incubated over 320 businesses, 87% of them being successful in terms of being sustainable post events graduation. One of the key factors that we are focusing on, Deshan, which you would be happy to hear about as well, is that we are moving towards a strong gender lens. So moving our own internal target to promoting at least and supporting 70% of female-owned businesses.
That's very exciting.
I think when we look at,
I did see that you've got almost an all-female new intake. Is that correct?
Correct. So we've just launched an all-female intake, but the internal target is really that on the scale of our overall business support, we want to move towards at least 70% of them being female-owned. Currently, we've supported out of the 320 businesses, 51% have been female-owned, which is quite a high number in its own right. Especially in an industry that is quite male-dominated, right. And access to opportunities for women-owned businesses are not that great. I think we want to push the envelope and really look at where the need is in the marketplace and support women-owned businesses. So you'll hear a lot about that from us in the near future as well.
Fantastic, and I really do look forward to that. We are coming to the end of our conversation, and I know you guys have to run as well. Just a quick note from both of you. What are you looking forward to in terms of the shifts in the industry? I'm hearing digitization, I'm hearing bringing in more women. In terms of just the incubation and acceleration programs that you are aware of, what do you think is the major shift that's going to be happening there? Post-pandemic, I suppose.
Yeah. Desigan, you want to go for it first?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Deshan. I think certainly from an incubation acceleration perspective, definitely seeing a shift towards initiatives and programs which are more demand-led. And what I mean by that is that it's gone are the days where we are developing businesses for compliance and for BE points. I think if COVID has taught us anything, it's around the ability to survive locally. And that's why localization has become a very important theme through government, as well as to the private sector. We need to build up that capacity and that capability within South Africa when it comes to the provision of goods and services. So one of the things that we are seeing, and fortunately Property Point was actually built on this premise, that if we are to develop businesses,
I think
that we are integrating them into the market with all the skills and capacity.
Right. So it is about localization and integration, and it being demand led. I can certainly see that. Thanks, Desigan. And from your side, Shawn, what are you looking forward to in terms of the accelerator incubator programs that are existing in South Africa right now?
Yeah, I think that if we reflect, and we've been reflecting on this this week, just looking at the president's SONA address, some of the key elements that came out there for us was really the statistics around the access to funding. I think we did, as a country, it was quite shocking, especially even if we look at the loan guaranteed fund, the 200 billion loan guaranteed fund, only around 17 billion was accessed. We have a huge need for funding, but I think that our the methodologies and the due diligence processes that we are applying to small businesses for access to funding is a hindrance to their success. So definitely a stronger focus on both re-looking at the efficiencies of access to funding in the country, as well as the bankability of businesses, I think is going to be key. Once again, concurring with Desigan around local economic development, I think that being able to have a keen focus on really developing grassroots businesses, outlying areas, and local economic development is quite critical, and creating access to markets for those local economic development areas. With that, hand in hand goes promoting local. I think that COVID has also shown us that global supply chains have come down. So the ability to create local suppliers on certain elements is going to be key.
Fantastic. So just one more question before you go. Who are your greatest influences that you are following right now? Which books are you reading? Who's your kind of key person that you're following?
So for me, I think it's so for me, there was a fascinating book that was released last year from Abdullah Varachia. And the title of the book is Reset, Rewire, and Reimagine. And I would recommend that for anyone actually to be able to really look at the shift that COVID has created and try to find the opportunities in the market that are available. And I think Abdullah really does a great job with articulating that very simply. And a nice narrative behind it as well.
Thank you very much. I'll be going out to look for that one. And you, Shawn, who's your current influencer that you're following?
I think Desigan stole my thunder there. No, but I think just to give some context to it also is that I think Abdullah in his book really sets a good platform from a South African context, but also looking at it globally. And I think that he's definitely one of the forward thinkers in the space of disruption, and how it also impacts both global economies. But I love the fact that he has such a good grasp on the local market and the South African context, both politically as well as economically. And those two elements really goes hand in hand in the South African context. So yeah.
Fantastic, great.
Thumbs
so
up.
Obviously it's a double star for Abdullah Varachia's book, and we're going to go and look for that. I'm certainly looking forward to reading it myself. But just to thank you guys both for showing up, being part of this conversation. We really want to bless the SMME space, the startups, those that are in the trenches working hard to keep employees employed and making a dent in our GDP. So thank you for your efforts in that. I didn't really get around to talking about Property Point's amazing awards and acknowledgements, but I'm going to ask people to go and look up Property Point and see it for yourselves. I'm sure I'll see you guys shortly, but thank you so much for joining us again. And yeah, have a great day further, and looking forward to seeing all the amazing things you've got up your sleeves for the rest of the year. Bye-bye, Shawn. Bye-bye, David.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks, Deshan.